Hello everyone and welcome to the Prado Museum in Madrid, Spain. In today's weekly short conversation in English, I want to start with a thank you. A thank you to all of you because it's been about a year since the American Friends has started putting on these weekly videos in English, and we are so excited, so pleased to see the warm reception that we've had on Prado social media. You know that we're a nonprofit organization, and so everything that we do is possible because of your support. And our only mission, the only thing that we're here to do is to help the Prado, to help it grow, to help it share its collection with a wide audience. So thank you for helping us do that. Today is going to be our last video of this season. We're going to take a summer break and then we'll be back this fall. And I think today we're in for a special treat. You'll see that we're in a room that's a little bit darker than normal, a little bit smaller than normal. This is the room that's dedicated to Goya's black paintings. The Black Paintings is the name that's given to Goya's 14 paintings that he created at the end of his life when he lived alone in a country house on the outskirts of Madrid. And he painted these directly onto the wall of the house. And the house was called the Quinta del Sordo. The Quinta being like a country house and Sordo meaning deaf, because Goya lost all of his hearing in an illness in his 40s, and so this is why his country house is called Deaf Man's Villa, or Deaf Man's Country House, La Quinta del Sordo. And these are absolutely fascinating. They are fascinating for so many reasons. They are dark and mysterious and enigmatic, visceral. These were painted directly on the walls, and they're not frescoes. I mean, it's oil directly painted onto the walls, and in some ways they're really puzzling. We don't know what they mean. In other ways, they kind of don't even need any explanation at all. You know, Goya is often thought of as like the end of the great old masters and the beginning of modern painting, and I think that that is so evident here in this room. And in these paintings, we can also see a lot of the moral issues that preoccupied Goya over the course of his career. And here we're going to have a look at one painting called The Witch's Sabbath, or the Great He-Goat. And we have to think about how Goya was feeling when he painted these, his state of mind, his worldview, when he was making these really unsettling but beautiful images. And how he's feeling is important because these were painted for his own pleasure and not for any client, and they were probably not even meant to be seen. And so they're really personal and they're really imaginative, and this is part of what makes them so fascinating and so complex. We have to think that Goya had a long life. He died when he was 82 and he was 73 when he started painting these. And for the most part, he really had to paint what people commissioned from him. He was really successful, so he was a court painter. He worked for the King of Spain, and he was hired by some of the highest-ranking aristocracy to decorate palaces and paint their portraits. But at the same time, he was part of this enlightened elite. And he fought against and he denounced the things that he thought were backward in society, the things that were holding society back, like superstition and magic and ignorance. I think we can see all of these concerns here in this painting. Inequality and the cruelty of war. These were especially evident in his drawings and his engravings, and that's, if you think that's where he would have had the most creative license, when he's not working for a client. And then again, they resurface here when he's painting for himself at the end of his life. So here we have the Witch's Sabbath with this satanic figure, and a whole group is huddled around worshiping. You can see the wall label here, so you can find out more information on your own. You can look at the website and find out more about all of these paintings. And it's interesting to see how this group, it turns into kind of one single seething mass. But if you look at each individual person, these figures are absolutely terrifying. They are even physically deformed. But they also look terrified at the same time. We have to remember that the black paintings are called the black paintings not just because of the color palette, but also because of this dark subject, the psychological undertones of all of the paintings here. So when he moved into the Quinta del Sordo, he was 73 years old. He began to paint for himself. And so these were a way for Goya to vent, to express himself. They were entirely a product of his own imagination. And they were for his own personal satisfaction. It seems like he didn't even show them to many people. So not only did he paint them for himself, he kept them to himself too. And this is actually one of the reasons that we don't really know exactly how they were distributed in the house. After Goya died, the house ended up in the ownership of his grandson, Mariano, and then it passed through a few different proprietors, and it was finally purchased by a Belgian baron, Erlanger. Erlanger, he hired a French photographer, Laurent, to document the paintings in the house, and thanks to those images, plus the work of art historians, we have an idea of how they were distributed in the house. And we know that they were in between the living room and the dining room, and you have to think what kind of a state of mind you would have to be in to paint this on your living room wall. And for example, we can think of this image here of Saturn devouring his son, and this is a mythological story. This is when Saturn, or Kronos, he hears a prophecy that one of his sons is going to overthrow him. And so, to prevent this from happening, he decides to eat each of his sons as he's born. And this is him eating his sons. But one of them escapes, of course, and the one that escapes is going to be the one that overthrows him, which is Jupiter or Zeus. And this has been painted other times in history, but this painting, I think, is a little bit different from others for a few different reasons. And first of all, the figure that he's eating isn't a child, it isn't a baby. This is different. This is a full-grown man, or maybe even a full-grown woman. And also, this is so shocking, I think, because there aren't any other elements, any other attributes that tell us that this is a mythological painting. There's nothing else to identify the figures except for this gruesome act and the action that's taking place. And then especially unique is that expression on Saturn's face. He doesn't look like he's powerful, like he's even power hungry. He looks like he's mad, like he's absolutely crazy, lost, unhinged, and maybe even fearful, kind of desperate, frantic. Like he's doing this just because he absolutely has to. And so this makes you wonder, what does Goya think about humanity at this point in his life? What is he thinking about power? Now, after Erlanger had the rooms of the country house photographed, he had the paintings removed from the walls, and this is done with a delicate process that was more common in the 19th century. It's less common to do it today, but it was the way to get frescoes out of their original location with a process called detachment, or strappo. And in detachment, they put, I'm not an art conservator, so you should know that, first of all. This is a disclaimer, but I'm not an expert in art conservation. But by putting a cloth covered by adhesive onto the painting on the wall, and then removing the painting, just the topmost layer of the pigment, we can take the painting off of the wall and then build a stronger backing on the back, build it as support, a canvas in this case, and then the top cloth can be removed with vapor. And so this is how we have these paintings here on canvas today. But when the conservator in the 19th century was working on these, he actually took some creative license, which would have been a little bit not a little bit, would have been very impossible to think of doing today, but in the 19th century things were a little bit different. And so we'll see one of those in this painting here of the dog, one of these changes. And the dog, this is at the center of the room here, and it is just strikingly beautiful, and it's also so sad. But its meaning, like others, is really, it's open and it's difficult to interpret, it's difficult to know what it means, but as you stand here, you realize what's happening, what we're looking at. And what we're seeing is that this dog is barely able to lift its head out of this mass that is just about to cover him. And we can think of him drowning, really. That this is just about to cover his mouth and his nose. It's a heart-wrenching image, but at the same time, it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, the forms are so elegant, so clean. It's a beautiful painting. But we know that around here there actually used to be a few birds. And we can think about how this composition would have been different if there were birds here in the painting, and also think about how the dog's gaze, looking upward, maybe looking at those birds, might be different, how the feeling of this painting might have changed. So after the paintings were transferred to canvas, Erlanger exhibited them at the World's Fair in 1876 in Paris, and they were fiercely criticized, and we have to think that that this is still the 19th century, and so these are way ahead of their time, and they were criticized not just because of their dark content, but also because the expressive brushstrokes are really, really modern. We can see some of them if we get close to the details here, but they're almost on the border of abstraction, really. Let's look at some details here. Like, look at this face. So in 1881, they were donated to the Spanish state, and after that, then they came to the museum. And we actually don't even know if these paintings are finished. Goya painted them between about 1819 and 1823, and this coincides with a brief liberal government in Spain, which ended when Louis XVIII of France helped Ferdinand VII regain absolute power. And after that, Goya asked for permission to leave the country, and he said that he was an old man and that he was sick and that he needed a change of scenery to recuperate. But in reality, he would never come back. He left in 1824, and he may have left these unfinished. We don't know. We don't know. And if that's the case, then it's even more difficult, both for us to analyze their subject matter and also their style. So Goya would stay in France, and he died in Bordeaux in 1828. So in all of these, we have these recurring moral concerns of Goya, this mature aesthetic style, and perhaps maybe what's most exciting is a glimpse into an artist's frame of mind. And we can really see here how he is the precursor for avant-garde movements of the 20th century, like Expressionism and Surrealism, and how Goya is that connecting piece in between the great old masters and the new avant-garde yet to come. And with that, I hope that you've enjoyed having a closer look at the Black paintings. I hope you've enjoyed all of these weekly videos this year in English, and you can find out more about the American Friends on our website. You can find out more how you can support the things that we're doing, and we can't do this without the support of people like you. So thank you so much, and we'll see you again in the fall. Have a great summer.